4 things.
7:24, 24 after 7 o'clock. It is the wake-up call. The prophet of doom is in the studio. If you want to check out his website, readysetprepare.org. And if you see the website, before we talk about the natural disasters, I want to ask you a question, James, about disaster of a different sort, and that's somebody dating your daughter. I'm going to be enduring that in about 23 years.
And I have 10 rules for dating my daughter. And she just turned 15. One of the rules is if you show up and honk the horn outside, you better be delivering something, because you're not coming to get my daughter, is one of them. Another one is, I know guys like to wear their pants really, really low these days, and I think that's fine, but I have an agreement. If you want to date Sarah, then I'm going to take my nail gun out, and I'm going to nail your pants to your waist and to make sure that they don't fall off. Just simple things like that.
What does Sarah think of the rules?
Oh, Sarah is,
100%
uncommitted on the rules, but
Sarah doesn't have a choice.
That's right, because I'm bigger than she is for this, at least.
When do you expect? When can she date?
She's already held hands. I'm just appalled. So,
God,
as well, you should be.
I figure she gets through college, through the first starter marriage, and then she can start dating.
See, I have a son who's 15, and so my warning to Brady is: remember, these girls have a father who will kill you. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I'm the guy in the insane clown mask when you drive up late, looking through the window. So be afraid, be very.
That's better than a gun, I think.
Yeah,
I like that
idea,
a lot.
James. Gosh, we have had you on the show so many times, and it's the first time we've ever had you in the studio.
Yeah,
so
this
first
is fun.
off, welcome, and thank you for bringing goodies.
Absolutely. Thanks for the coffee.
When I was doing the news there, we were kind of conversing during one of the stories about the issue with geothermal, and you worked for a long time as a state geologist. And you were talking a little bit about Oregon's sort of unique position when it comes to geothermal power.
We have incredible potential for geothermal energy in Oregon. Mm-hmm. The Newberry Crater area, the water literally is bubbling up into the lakes, the Paulina Lakes and everything. But it's a sensitive area. That's a national volcanic monument. So developing around Newberry Crater can be tricky. But there are companies that are pursuing that. And they're doing it responsibly. So there's incredible potential. But down in Klamath Falls, they're already using geothermal energy. They use it to heat sidewalks and bridges, and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of homes down in the Klamath Falls area use geothermal energy to heat their homes. So, people don't realize that, once you get on the other side of the Cascades, there's just this incredible potential. So, as we're looking at renewable energy sources, Oregon, as gas prices continue to go up and up, renewable energy like geothermal starts looking better and better for Oregon.
Very cool. And we're kind of in a unique position. There's not a lot of places around the country that have the kind of geothermal activity that we do. I'm sitting here thinking, well, there's always around Yellowstone and a couple of other, Hawaii. But other than that, we're kind of unique in that regard.
We are. Just think about all the hot springs around the state. That's geothermal energy. Just outside of Portland, up the Clackamas River, there's a couple of beautiful hot springs that you can go and soak in. And the water's coming out of the ground at 180 degrees and sometimes even hotter. So the potential is there. It's developing it responsibly and not ruining the aquifer. That's happened in other places around the country. So you got to be careful, but it can be done, and there's incredible potential here in Oregon.
We've got the Oregon State Cascades crew doing the natural gas thing over in Bend. Are there some things going on as far as like in 5 years, will we be able to look back and say, okay, geothermal, there's being strides, there's experimentation going on. Are we kind of climbing up the ladder?
We are, and it literally is directly related to oil prices. And as oil gets more expensive, geothermal looks better and better. But it's a trade-off. I mean, geothermal, to get it going, you're talking about millions of dollars in exploration wells and equipment. So it's a pretty big investment up front. Once you get it rolling, it works great. But companies need to realize, companies need to know that they can make a profit, because it's private corporations that are doing this. And you got to work really, really closely with all the regulators as well.
Yeah, like everything else in life. So yesterday was the great shakeout. Did you stop, drop, and
at
cover
10:18? I was under my desk and holding on. So yes.
Well, good for you. All right, so I'm going to kind of divert the conversation for just a second here regarding that, because yesterday we were talking about that and doing that in the news, and we had a guest in here that was like, really what you're supposed to do is there's the whatever it is, the
triangle of life.
The triangle of life.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up.
And what the theory is if you get under a desk, the debris hits the desk, compresses the desk, crushes you underneath it. Whereas if you are just to the side of the desk, either on the right side or the left side, and curl up, the desk will compress, but you will be in this triangle of safety, and it will save your life.
Right.
What say you?
What say I? Well, the way I explain it to people is if you want to believe in the triangle of life, what happens is the rainbow ponies come down from Candyland, and they make this magical space next to the big desk that you should have gotten under, and you're protected. So if you believe in rainbow ponies from Candyland, then the triangle of life is a great idea. But every single emergency management organization in the country, and most of them around the world, think the triangle of life is a bunch of bull. It's dangerous, and people can die if they do something like this. And the reason is, how do you know that that space that you've chosen next to the desk is going to be the space where no debris falls? Well, you can't. That's ridiculous. And I prefer the rainbow pony.
Okay, so where would you pick underneath a desk over like a door well?
Absolutely. You don't want to get in doorways anymore. A lot of buildings now don't have walls that are connected to anything. Just a couple of small bolts, like this building as well. And if the ground is really shaking and things are moving, the door could swing back and forth, and you could hurt your little pinkies and legs and things like that. So no, the best idea is still to get under a sturdy table or desk. Wait till the ground stops shaking, and then get out of the building. And the other thing is, it's very rare for buildings to pancake, especially in the United States. We've got building codes that keep buildings from doing that. Older brick and mortar buildings are the most dangerous in an earthquake. So, if it's a California style earthquake and you're in a brick and mortar building, well, it's probably already been seismically retrofitted, or it's already fallen down. In Oregon, we've got tens of thousands of older brick and mortar buildings, especially in our beautiful historic downtown areas, that haven't been seismically retrofitted. So, it's kind of
you got to know you got to be situationally aware.
But a lot of injuries in earthquakes take place people exiting buildings and things falling on top of them. So you're really kind of taking a chance. I've incredible video from Japan, people running out of buildings, and I mean huge chunks of the buildings are falling off because the ground's shaking so hard. So.
And they're miles ahead of us when it comes to that.
And they're
kind of
miles. Yes, they've got the highest seismic standards of any place in the world.
So. Those videos of, I got a call. I mean, when that happened, I got a call in the middle of the night from one of the folks that worked here, and all he said was, he goes, "You need to turn on your TV. It's the end days." I'm like, what? He goes, It's Armageddon. It's the end days. And I turned it on. It was like, oh my God, I can't believe what I'm watching.
It's hard to believe that that's really happening.
And the thing is, and you start thinking about that, and you think about this, the Juan de Fuca fault that lies off of our coast, which has all of the stored energy to be able to basically throw that kind of event here in the state of Oregon, I mean, it really gives you kind of a pause for concern.
It's pretty scary. In fact, a couple of days ago, I was in Astoria talking to ODOT managers and then all of the county and city partners throughout the region, and we were talking about exactly this, that if we get the big one, and recent science says it's going to happen sooner than we thought.
When you say that, anything close to a timeline? As far I know you can't get a prediction out of you.
So the U.S. Geological Survey now says, and they're a very conservative organization, that we've got an almost 40% chance of one of these big earthquakes off the coast of Oregon in the next 50 years.
Okay.
That's almost 50-50. That's pretty nasty odds. And if you look at the geologic record going back 10,000 years, the last one was 312 years ago. 75% of those 40 events that have happened in the last 10,000 years happened before 312 years went by. So that people's brains start to explode when I do this in talks. So it's sobering.
Well, I mean, we're sitting on the ring of fire. I mean, and if you...
I know, isn't that cool?
It's cool in some ways, but in other ways it's not, because on the ring of fire, this stuff is a pretty common occurrence.
That's right.
And, I mean, Google sometime, if you didn't know that, Google ring of fire and kind of take a look at what that really means for Oregon. For folks that are sitting there going, God, those are incredible odds. What are four or five things that people could do right now or this week to just kind of get their head around the possibility and what they could do on an individual basis to prepare for something like that happening?
I'm glad you asked. I put together 4 simple things that you can do this week that'll kind of jumpstart you into preparedness. One of them is make an out-of-state contact that knows how to text. If you're over 30 years old and don't know how to text or tweet, go find a teenager and learn how to do this, because what we're told is you're not going to be able to use landlines, probably for the most part, if we get a big earthquake. You're not going to be able to make voice calls. But because it's such a small data packet that's sent with a text, that text messages will be able to get through. And you'll be able to make an out-of-state contact. Everybody in your family, all your friends have that same out-of-state contact.
Gotcha.
They can connect through that out-of-state contact. That's one. Number 2 is stop being a Luddite and get a smartphone. And then turn your smartphone into the ultimate safety tool. And what you do is you put all emergency contacts in there. You download first aid and CPR apps. You download a flashlight app, GPS, in case of emergency apps. You put on your phone rally points, what prescription medicines you take, food and medical allergies you might have, and even keep photos of you and your pets, because if you and your pets are separated in any type of disaster and you go down to the shelter, they're not going to give you your pet back unless you've got proof. And the best proof is a picture of you and your pet together. You can't just stand there and call Fluffy, then the cat's looking at you like you're insane, but that's my cat.
Right.
But if you got a picture, that's number 2. Number 3 is visit one website, and it's called theburninghouse.com. And the idea of the website is if you only had a few minutes to get out of your house, what would you take with you? And it's kind of a conflict between what's practical, what's valuable, and what's sentimental. But it's also a great way for you and your family to sit down and start the conversation about being prepared. So, I'm talking with my daughter, and I said, Sarah, what are the most important things? If we have to get out of the house in the middle of the night, what are the most important things you're going to want to take with you? And the light goes on in her head.
And she says the Xbox.
And that's disaster preparedness right there.
Yeah.
And that's the start. So that kind of gets the conversation going. And the website, people post pictures of the things that they would take. So it's really touching and compelling.
It's funny. I actually have a box of photographs that are sitting by the bedroom door on a shelf. I mean, it's where the most important photographs family, ancestor, everything else, and it sits there for simply that purpose.
Yeah, and there are apps on the cloud like Dropbox that are free. You get gigabytes and gigabytes of free storage space, and there's several of them that'll give you up to 7 or 8 or 10 gigabytes of storage space. You can dump everything on your computer, all your music, all your photographs, all your important papers, and back them up online, and then you can access them from anywhere. You have to leave your home. You've still got all that information with you.
Let me talk about the first one you talked about. I think is probably one of the most crucial, because I know after Loma Prieta, there was a couple of days where, we didn't have power. We didn't have smartphones at that time back in 1989. And we were hearing things about San Francisco. We were hearing things about folks that we knew. I heard, a week later, I heard that people that I knew were okay, they were talked about in their family as missing. And to think about all the stress, I mean, you're already going through a disaster, and maybe you've lost, your house or things like that. But then to compound things, you think people are missing or dead. And if you had that, like you say, somebody else somewhere that can kind of be the network of communication, that is going to solve a lot of problems. Yeah,
and we talked. You were talking, Bill, a little bit earlier about the Red Cross apps with Francisco Ianni. One of the earthquake app actually has some stress relievers. As part of the app. Here's what you do if you're in a disaster to calm yourself down. That's one of the big things that we stress when we're doing workshops. And that leads to the fourth simple thing that you can do this week to start getting prepared, and it's to read a book. And the book is called The Unthinkable by Amanda Ripley. Who survives when disasters strike and why? It teaches you kind of how to train your brain to react in a crisis. It shows you how the science works in your brain, but it then also gives you the 4 or 5 steps that you need to take to begin to train your brain. One of them is to get in shape. That works for us in everyday life, but it's also really, really important in disasters. The people who are in better shape survive better. It's being resilient, and by that I mean there are people who know that they can affect the outcome of a situation just by force of will or because of this positive attitude that they have. And if you have a positive attitude and know you have the ability to affect something that's happening, then you've got a better chance of surviving the disaster. And people that learn from mistakes also have a better chance of surviving a disaster. Another one is to...
So in other words, 50% of society is dead.
Well, it certainly makes you think that if there's a disaster, I really want my meds with me, So, and then the final one, which is really interesting, is get to know your neighbors. Because in a big, big disaster, and especially in an earthquake, the people that come to your rescue aren't the first responders, aren't the fire department or the police department. They're your neighbors. So get to know your neighbors. What I tell people is bake some cookies, go down to that weird neighbor down the street, knock on his door. Hey, Bill, I know you party a lot, and it really bugs the heck out of me, but if there's a big earthquake, here's some cookies. Rescue me first. And
it's not a bad idea.
Not a bad idea at all.
Not a bad idea.
James, out of curiosity, did enough people take yesterday seriously?
No,
or did
not even
some
close.
take it?
Well, they all had almost 700,000 people in the state of Washington participate in the shakeout, and we had about 110,000.
How do we know that?
Because you register on the Great Oregon Shakeout website. So we kind of knew how many people, and it's a lot bigger than last year, which was only about 25,000. But once again, you're talking about a very small portion of the 4 million people that live in the state. Obviously, it affects this big earthquake everybody west of the Cascades to a degree where everybody's going to get shaken. But that's still 3.5 million people in our state that are, for the most part, except for the coast, fairly clueless about the fact that we even get earthquakes in Oregon. So We got a long way to go as far as education.
Interesting emails here. I noticed at the coast the evacuation routes take you to the town's oldest graveyard. That's one of them.
That's ironic.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Another one. We've heard this stuff. Cali gets quakes all the time. It might be nice to have a quake here in Eugene to break up the boredom. That's one. And then this one. Under sturdy desk. Just curious, has he personally experienced a 7.0 earthquake in a 10-story building under a desk that's moving laterally on the floor 1 to 3 feet with every shake? You know the videos. I'm just wondering, the videos I've seen from Japan make me shudder to think about being under a 200-pound desk, but I understand the rationale.
And what you're supposed to do is you drop to the ground, and you hold on to the object that you're under, because the guy's exactly right. Things are going to be moving, but if you're holding on, then you're at least moving with it. What's your alternative? Get in the stairwell and try to run down the stairs while the building's moving back and forth?
Yeah. No, I understand exactly what you're saying.
Once again, that's what your brain wants you to do. Your brain either wants you to freeze
Get the heck out.
or wants you to fly as fast as possible, fight or flight or freeze. And one of the things in Amanda Ripley's book is she looks at disasters, not only earthquakes, but disasters from all around the world and how people behaved in those disasters. A giant fire in a disco, and everybody just sits there because they don't know what to do, and their brains have completely frozen, and nobody gets out. I mean, those kind of things. A ferry goes down with thousands of people aboard, and nobody knows what to do, so they just sit there. So training your brain to actually take action is something that you can read about, but you almost have to practice.
Learn how not to be a victim. I can't believe how fast this has gone, James.
Can you come on every Friday?
Yeah. Can you? And you just.
And you don't have to
I
bring
didn't even
donuts.
get to tell any of my cool earthquake myths and legends.
Okay, so. Okay, tell. You've got time for one.
Best one that you have.
Your favorite one.
Okay, this one is from the Tillamook Indians, and this is a great story. So this story's probably thousands of years old. When the water came, everything got dark. No one could see anything. The men could not go fishing. Women could not dig roots. Soon the water began to rise. Many small things drowned. Small people. All the people were talking. They hired a man to find Beaver who had hidden the sun and pay him money. He was a fine diver to get to Beaver's tunnel. Meanwhile, all the people made rafts. They lived on rafts because everything was flooded. The man couldn't find Beaver. The people sent other men, but none of them could dive. At last they thought, maybe Muskrat can get there. He can dive underwater. The people gave Muskrat a large amount of money. They also gave him a knife. Muskrat put that knife on him behind him for a tail. Muskrat didn't have a tail until that day. Muskrat found Beaver's place. It was bright daylight there in Beaver's home. It was a nice, warm place. That little muskrat came back with the sun. Everywhere there was daylight again, and all the flood went down. All the people left the rafts and built their homes again. Not all the people drowned, but a large number. So that's a story of tsunamis at the Oregon coast. And this story is probably thousands of years old, and it was told generation to generation to generation. And people got the message, hey, if the waters rise, we've got to build rafts. And eventually the waters will go back down and we'll be okay. So that's kind of the takeaway message. The part about beaver and muskrat is just
bizarre.
Cool.
All right.
James Roddey.
Hey, your website. We got to talk about. I mean, just at least give us the website, because you've created kind of your disaster awareness blog and everything else.
It's readysetprepare.org, and I've got all kinds of neat checklists, like a pet safety checklist and a home hazard hunt and all those kind of things. And I've got the 4 simple things that you can do this week to get prepared as well, so people can go there and get some good information. And then I give presentations. In fact, I'm talking to Habitat for Humanity in Eugene for lunch today, keynote speaker at their annual conference. So I give talks all over the place. So go to the website and you can actually see where I'm going to be giving talks as well.
Yep, and can contact you from the website. So James, on the email, wow, this guy should come every Friday. See,
I second that.
See, thank you, Matthew, by the way, for that email. Great, James, great to finally meet you.
This was really fun. Thanks, guys.
This was great. Thanks for being in the studio.
Next time you come to Eugene, please come inside.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, let us know in advance, and you're always welcome to have a chair in our studio.
Thank you.
All right.
Fantastic.
Thank you, James. James Roddey on News Radio 1120 KPNW. We'll hook up with the other John Cruz, in just a minute.